Okay. Welcome everybody to the press conference of Dead of Winter. And welcome to our guest, the director, Brian Kirk, the actress, Miss Emma Thompson, the actress, Gaia Wise, and the two scriptwriters, Dalton Lieb and Nicholas Jacobs Larson.
The creators, the writers.
So my first question is for Brian and the two script writers. Dead of Winter is, among other things, a pure action thriller with a very strong and original female character. What can you tell us about the genesis of the story and what did intrigue you about it?
Can you hear me okay? Dalton and I are both from Minnesota in the US, and I think we both grew up seeing a lot of amazing women who really raised us. And for Dalton, a huge part of the character is his grandmother.
Yeah, my dad's mom, Dorothy, my grandma, was a huge inspiration for the character. She was just this really strong, resilient, resourceful woman that just felt like would face adversity head on with a sense of humor, a kind of a dark sense of humor about the world, but would never kind of give up and just persevere. And we just felt like we wanted to spotlight this kind of hero, which feels like a hero you don't see very often, which might be kind of overlooked by the rest of the world. But we wanted to show the depth of her strength and resilience and heroism.
And I think also we had never seen a woman character like that in a film like this, and that felt very new and interesting to us. And as Dalton said, placing her in this scenario where her strength is really spotlighted was, really the impetus for us that we got excited about.
Yeah, for me, it came pretty fully formed from these guys. It was an incredible script with an amazing character at its heart from the outset. But one of the true attractions of the character was that she was a fully formed human being, that she, wasn't a superhero, that she didn't have special ops training, that she didn't have any superpowers, that, that she was alone and hopelessly out of her depth, but would never give up. And I think that is a more profound definition of heroism than one that we're usually accustomed to seeing on screen.
So Emma, you play a very strong and courageous woman. She traveled into the wilderness to say goodbye to the memory of the love of her life. How would you describe her, in fact? Because, in fact, in the end, she finds herself forced to save the life of another human being.
Yes, that's true. But you know how I think of her? I think of her as someone who has had a really full, rich, happy life. And one of the things I loved most about the script was we seem to be telling an awful lot of stories about the super rich. We seem to be looking at a lot at the darker side of human nature and kind of wanting to take our revenge in some way. There's so many things, not only in film, but also on television about this. And this woman's life, which is an ordinary, humble life, is so beautiful and so rich that she's able at the end to go, well, I've had this wonderful life, this wonderful love. I'm able to let it go in order that someone else might find herself, might live. I love that part of the story, the story of her love, which Gaia, and I together make the love story of it. And I think the boys are right that what's so weird, okay, so 30 years ago when I was just starting, I had a women's group that I used to call, and my first question to this group of actors, writers, and directors was, who is the female hero? What does she do? Because at the moment, I'm still identifying with Marlon Brando, and I'm not happy about that, and I don't also want to be in the same thing, doing the things that Marlon Brando does, only with hair, long hair. I'm fed up with the fact that now we call feminist action just women doing the same thing as men do. And it seemed to me that this woman was a real heroine because she's not like Brian says, she doesn't say that you should be afraid because I have certain skills. I have skills. No, but she does have skills, like she can sew. She also knows that if she, I mean, some of the things that she does are so surprising. And when I was reading the script, I went, oh my God, that's genius. Because she's been also formed by weather. Yeah. You know, she's someone who's lived in really close proximity with nature, with weather, and with her surroundings. So she knows that she can really mess people up by freezing their stuff. Just saying. That's all I'll say for now.
So, Gaia, you play the younger version of your mother in the backstory that we saw through the flashback. That is so important because, in fact, it changed completely the perspective of the movie from a pure action to a more intimate drama. What can you tell us about this topic and your role?
I think seeing Barb, seeing the character grow and what she experiences and the trauma that she goes through, and seeing how from that she becomes this woman who is capable and able and willing to sacrifice for another human. It was so lovely to be able to show her relationship with Carl, with lovely Cohen Hosty Blaney, who's just one of the great loves of my life. I love him dearly. And we had such a lovely time forming this relationship, forming this love, knowing that you don't see much of it, but the stuff that you see really has to make an impact because you really have to see where Barb has come from, what she's gone through, and then how she ends up in the position that she does. And I hope we've done that.
I mean, it was transformative, I think, to the movie, and that we had these islands of warmth and a sea of coldness, yes. And it was like, that was the well that Emma drew from at every time she hit her lowest ebb. Yeah. That was the place that delivered the strength that carried her forward. And as you said, Emma, that delivered the fullness of, for her rich, full life, that gave her the strength to risk her own well-being to save a complete stranger. That comes from that history that was built between the two women.
Okay, there are so many colleagues in the room, so time for question. Raise your hand. One there.
Question to Emma. You are in incredibly great shape. You fight, you jump into the lake, the frozen lake. How did you prepare for this role?
Non c'è le parole. Why start an action thing when you're 66? That's just stupid. But anyway, so I thought, well, I just got as strong as I could get in London. And I spent a month, actually, in all seriousness, in Finland in the beginning. By the way, Finland is so fabulous. You all have to go. Anyway, it's an amazing country with wonderful people. But we spent a long time getting used to the cold because it was really cold. Not just, cold, just cold, like it grips you like metal. It's like being in this kind of cage. And so we all had to develop a strength. We all had to sort of go into frozen lakes. And we went into frozen lakes. We did all this company here, including Dalton and Brian, all took our clothes off and sat in a sauna, a Finnish sauna, and then walked across the ice and got into a frozen lake. We all did that together in order to get used to it. The stories about trying to sink us in the lake when we're inside a dry suit and our costumes are hilarious. I mean, I don't want to spoil it for you all. I mean, you've seen the film, presumably, have you? Okay, so I can tell you that most of the time we just floated on the top like great big brown islands. We couldn't. There were divers underneath, desperately trying to pull us down. There was a lot of comedy attached to our preparations, but learning the one thing I think that really scared me, genuinely scared me, was not running about. Although I did pull every single muscle in my body, but was holding my breath underwater. So Judy and I did this kind of training with an amazing man called, get this, Kirk Crack. He's incredible. And he taught us, by the end of our training, we did it for a few weeks, we could hold our breath for 3 to 4 minutes. And that was, we were scared of that, weren't we, Bri? That was the thing that, because you get underwater and you go, oh, and then they go away. The divers go away with the air and you're on your own. So drowning was really a very profound experience.
But she was so prepared. By the time we got to shoot that underwater sequence, the underwater cinematographer told us that it was the most efficient diving work that he had done, which was due to the level of preparation that Emma...
Oh, I'm so proud.
And regarding the frozen lake, it was so cold that the best way to warm up was to lie down naked in the snow, because that shocked your body back into, it stopped you shivering.
Yeah.
So it was quite extraordinary.
It was. I could actually do with the frozen lake right now. I've never been so hot. I'm just saying.
But also the conditions give a level of authenticity. I mean, Emma always delivers an extraordinary amount of authenticity, but there are certain things that you cannot act, and that degree of cold is one of them.
Yeah. I'm having a second menopause. Here, you have that.
We saw the movie yesterday night. It's impressive. It's gorgeous. And I would like to ask you, Emma, how was it like for you to work with your own daughter, even if you don't have scenes together? Which feelings did it bring to you? And for Gaia, the same question, how was it like for you working with your mother? And what you talked about before having a scene, before shooting, what did you talk about it? Thank you.
Me and Guy, we go on walks, didn't we? We went for long walks before we started, and we talked about how Carl and Barb, what their lives would have been like. We talked about everything. We talked about what they might have eaten, what games they might have played, what their conversations. What else did we talk about?
Yeah, how they met, how they connected, what drew them to one another.
Yeah.
Why did they, not why did they stay together for so long, but what were the things they might have thought about? That thing. I think being there. Also, I think
because I was in Finland with us the whole time.
Because as a source of support for both of us, it was really lovely, because it would be like if after a long day, I'd go and sit in her hotel room and we'd eat crackers and Marmite, and she'd go, "This happened today," and I fell over, and go through these things, and I'm sort of sitting there biting my nails, going, "Okay, it's fine, everything's fine." But also you'd come to set, and you'd done so much work as well with the accent as well, that you'd be on set sometimes, and there was a take that we did where I did about 7 of them, because you kept going, "No, that's not right, that's not how she'd say it," and I was like, "Brian, can you get Mum to leave now, please?" And it was lovely, this being the first thing that we've done not working together.
Yeah, we'd done a tiny little bit on Redford's movie, the Bill Bryson, A Walk in the Woods, where she, of course, was playing my granddaughter, because, it's Redford. Anyway, let's not go there. But this was something, because we were creating a character together. So she was starting at the first bit, the hopeful, full of love, the being in love bit, and I was playing that piece, that beautiful piece of my life, I can't speak about it without crying actually, is over, and I've got to say goodbye to it, and it's so hard for her, and then suddenly she's plunged into this completely other story, and what happens when you're grieving, and something happens to sort of distract you, and it's so beautiful to see her completely distracted throughout the whole movie, and then back to where she started, even though she's dying. It's such a beautiful circle, that.
Yeah.
Kudos, guys.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful script.
Yeah.
And such a beautiful thing to witness these two guys creating that character together. I mean, there's a sense of history that we couldn't have imagined or hoped for. It was incredible.
Other question? There?
Intanto complimenti per il film. Proviamo? Meglio no, dai. Ecco. Intanto complimenti per il film. E quello che sorprende nel film è soprattutto una cosa, l'umanità. L'umanità è un film pieno di dolore, è un film pieno di sofferenza. Tutte e tre le donne, a parte la figlia, a parte quella che interpreta il passato, le donne del presente sono tre donne che soffrono tantissimo. Volevo sapere perché siete arrivati al punto di descrivere, di descrivere queste tre donne che non hanno speranza, che si portano dentro e vivono il dolore tremendo, al di là dopo di superare il lutto da parte della protagonista nell'acqua e liberare le ceneri, eccetera. Ma in generale sono tre donne costrette a soffrire tantissimo. Non lo so, l'ho trovato un film che ti uccide per questo dolore che circola.
Molto interessante. Allora, no, I better do it in English. But the thing is, yes, I think the person who suffers the most is Judy.
Yeah.
Because she really is caught inside a form of narcissistic, self-loathing, fear. She's really suffering. I mean, constantly from the moment we see her. And the young girl is like so many young people now, you know, someone who is finding living very hard. So isn't the point that at the end of it, everyone gets what they need, actually? It's very beautifully constructed, because she, the girl, is given the capacity and the desire to live. What greater gift could be given to anyone who's feeling hopeless and despairing? And you know how hopeless and despairing many of our young people are now. Not only because, you know, they're stuck in social media silos and being used by those companies, frankly, but also because they feel the climate, you know, they feel the suffering of the planet. It's a very difficult time for young people, and I think she's a very recognizable version of that. And what's so beautiful is at the end of the movie, she's found her purpose. You know she'll never, ever try to commit suicide again, because she knows that Barb's died for her. So she'll carry that extraordinary act of hope, actually. Yes, we call it sacrifice, and I like that word. I think we've lost the notion of sacrifice in our lives. I think it's a very important part of our lives. I don't mean in the Christian sense, but I mean in the purely human sense, that it is useful to make sacrifices. And also, if you want to have a good life, you need to make sacrifices sometimes. You can't just have a good life. It's not something that just comes. You know, it's hard, it's difficult. And like you see Gaia, you know, her character loses a child. It's very painful. And you're right, there is a lot of pain in it, but I also think there's a lot of humor and hope in it. Guys, you should address this.
Hopefully there's a lot of humor and hope in it. That certainly is our intention. Yeah. I think anything that Dalton and I write together, even if it is maybe seemingly very dark on the surface, we both, I think, feel that life is very complicated, and as Emma said, you can't really live a meaningful life without sacrifice. Absolutely. And that's sort of the point of what Barb does at the end of the film, is she allows Laurel's character to have a shred of hope that's going to keep her going, and she'll hopefully be living a full life because of what Barb did.
Yeah, and I think also the movie is very explicitly engages with the cycle of life, both human and natural. Yeah. And I think that, yes, there is suffering and loss and death, but there's also survival and rebirth and legacy, you know, and how do we continue? How do we hand on from one generation to the next? And for me, that's a very profound human level to the story that comes directly from the romantic relationship at the heart of it, but is passed on actually to you know, from a woman who has lost her own kid to a complete stranger. She, in effect, becomes a mother to that stranger. Mm-hmm. She gives her a second shot at life, and I think that there's an incredible degree of hope and humanity in that, and I think that, you know, one of the reasons why we'll love this character is that she shows us how to meet these challenges.
She's also very funny. That's an important thing that I think we try to imbue into the script. Is Barb has a great sense of humor, and sometimes the way she will react to insane circumstances is both heroic and a little hilarious because of who she is. She's lived this full, very rich life.
So I met Dalton's aunt, Tracy, and Tracy really talks like that. She's actually much more Minnesotan than Barb. And I spent, hours and hours talking to everybody over there. And I want to shout out to them because they were so much a part of the creation of this character, spending time with Minnesotans who explained, okay, so the making of this movie was mostly about gloves. It was mostly about gloves because we had to have 3 pairs of gloves. Because what does she do when she shoots the gun? She can't shoot the gun with the big gloves, so she has to have another pair of gloves. But then when she's in the fight at the end, she has to have a pair of gloves, otherwise I'm going to stick to the ice and be torn off like a mink, You know how they used to catch mink? Let's not talk about it. But anyway, so we had 3 sets of gloves, and every single day was, what gloves am I wearing? Hang on, where are we? Where am I on the gloves? There were gloves everywhere. It was just a story about gloves for us for many, many months. But the Minnesotans were the ones who say you have to have these big gloves because if you get cold hands, that's it. It's over. Your life is over. You die with cold hands. Is that not the case?
That's right. Well, and Brian and one of our amazing producers, John, went to Minnesota and actually spent time with these people. Yeah. Dalton's aunt Tracy, my dad Steve, up in northern Minnesota, and his friends, just to really, I think, soak in the authenticity of the culture. And Emma spent a lot of time talking to Tracy.
Yeah, it was, I think, every weekend during pre-production and during production, like a 2-hour Zoom call every Sunday, I think we would do them, and just kind of hang out and chat.
Yeah. So the first time I did a Zoom call in my normal voice, they were really, confused. Yeah. Why are you talking like that? I go, I'm so sorry. It's my real voice.
I feel the same when I see Emma looking glamorous because she basically lived in that suit.
I did.
The whole time she arrived in pre-production in that suit. She lived in it every day, and then Tim, the editor, and I spent quite a long time looking at her in that suit in post. And it's just like, it's such an enormous act of displacement. But it's true that in Minnesota, you never leave home without at least 3 pairs of gloves.
And also just about Minnesota and Finland, they're on the same latitude, and the characteristics in Finnish people are very similar, actually. It's so interesting how we humans, where we live, and the temperatures in which we live, and the challenges which nature, if we live in nature, if we're lucky enough to live in nature, it was so similar. So actually you could focus in on the Finns and go, actually, they're quite, that woman's really like Aunt Tracy. Yeah. But it's a totally different language and culture, of course. But wasn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I loved that.
Well, when we scouted Minnesota, we drove past a sign for Finland. Northern Finland, there is Finland in northern Minnesota. They're on the same, as Emma says, they're on the same line of latitude. Minnesota was settled by Finns. Even the vegetation is the same, in the same balance. Yeah. And actually, the gas station in the movie, I remember John and I stopped at a particular gas station. We took a photograph of it, and I said, I want a gas station. John, our producer, I said, I want a gas station just like that in the movie, and the gas station in the movie is literally just like that.
Yeah.
Okay, that was our last question. I want to thank our guest. Thank you for the movie, a very compliment, and thank you to talk with us.
Thank you. Grazie tantissimi, buona giornata.